So this is a joint work with Laura Blackstone and Sini Kamara. So while the title of the work is not explicit about it, this is a work about cryptanalysis in encrypted search. So let me give you, first of all, some background about the area before diving into the work. So at a very high level, encrypted search is the area that studies the design and implementation of protocols that allow us to search over encrypted data. And more specifically, we have usually a client that has a collection of documents that he or she wants to encrypt and send or outsource to the untrusted server and later query it to retrieve the results. So more precisely, we have a trusted client that, as you can see here, with a secret key, think of it as a password or something like that, that you will encrypt the document collection and generate an encrypted index that you will send then to the untrusted server. And then when the client wants to query, here, for example, wants to query for the keyword cat, it will encrypt it and send it to the untrusted server. The server will take this encrypted query and will take also the encrypted document and the index and will output a result. So this is, at a very high level, what the encrypted search protocol looks like. So from a security perspective, we are interested to understand the information that is disclosed during the execution of such a protocol. And we call the information that the server learns by just observing the encrypted data structure and the encrypted documents setup leakage. And think of it as the size of the document, for example. And we call the information that the server will learn during the query execution, the query leakage. And this leakage is more complicated than the setup leakage. And I'm going to go over it a little bit into detail in the next slide. So here are some patterns that the query leakage can be composed of. And these are the most kind of like standard patterns that we have. So the query equality, known as search pattern in literature, reveals if and when a query is repeated. And this is pretty common. The response identity pattern is known in literature as the access pattern, and it reveals the file identifiers in the response. We have the co-occurrence pattern, which reveals the number of files shared by any two queries. You can think of it as a matrix. And the response length pattern is the number of files, just simply the number of files matching a query. The volume pattern is the volume in bits of each file in the response. The total volume, intuitively is also just the sum of all file sizes in bits. So we will be using this terminology in our presentation today, but I'll be recalling whenever it's necessary the pattern. So one question that you may ask is, if somebody designs an encrypted search protocol, are we going to leak all of these patterns at once? And the answer is no, actually. It depends on the primitive that we use underneath. So encrypted search algorithm can be designed in different ways. It can be designed using property-preserving encryption, fully homomorphic encryption, Oblivious RAM, structured encryption. For the purpose of this work and this talk, we will be focusing on Oblivious RAM and structured encryption. So when we take these two primitives, there are different ways how we can use it to design an encrypted search protocol, but I'm going to discuss four of the main ones. So there is the standard that we call the baseline structured encryption or the baseline searchable encryption that basically leak all of these patterns that we have discussed about in the previous slide. Okay? Then there is the semi-ORAM construction. Think of it as a mix between Oblivious RAM and searchable encryption, in the sense that you use ORAM to encrypt the index and we use just searchable encryption or structured encryption to encrypt the files. Then there is the construction that we introduce in this work that we call opaque structured encryption, that only discloses the query equality and the total volume. And then there is the full ORAM construction that uses an Oblivious RAM to encrypt everything. So as you can see, there are different schemes that offer different leakage profiles. And I didn't discuss it in this slide, but every scheme has its own efficiency. So please refer to the paper for more details about the overhead. So now that we have seen all of these leakage patterns, one question that also you may ask is that what can we learn by just observing these leakage patterns? Can we actually learn something about the user's data? And the answer is yes, because it has been actually introduced 8 or 9 years ago, and this is known as leakage attacks. Conceptually, how it works, it takes as input a leakage pattern, one or more, and it will either recover the queries or recover the data or any combination of both. Any leakage attack will work under some specific assumptions related to the type of the adversary, the type of auxiliary information that the adversary has access to, or the type of actions that the adversary can do. So I'll expand on that right now in this slide. So when it comes to adversarial model, usually we consider two main models, the persistent and the snapshot model. So what is the persistent model? Is the adversary who can observe the encrypted structure, the encrypted documents, but also observe the entire execution of the query protocol. It's just like an adversary that sits there and observes everything. Think of it as the server. And there is the snapshot adversary that only observes the encrypted data structure and the encrypted document. Think of it as device theft kind of a scenario. Then when it comes to auxiliary information, here we also consider two main models. So the first model is what we call known samples, where the adversary here just has an idea about the distribution from which the data is generated. It doesn't have access to the actual user's data, it's just a distribution. And this is what we represent in this regime as known samples. Then there is the other regime, which is known data, where this is more powerful kind of assumption where the adversary has actually access to a subset or a fraction of the user's data, okay? And I will be modeling delta here. I'll be using delta to denote the fraction of the adversarially known data in this talk. Then it comes to the type of actions, whether the adversary is passive or active. Passive meaning that the adversary just observes what's going on in the execution of the protocol, and active means that the adversary can force some documents and insert them in the user's data set. Think of it as, for example, myself, I use an encrypted search algorithm to index my emails, and somebody from the audience sends me an email. This is an injection, for example. So in the area, there are two main influential cryptanalysis or leakage attacks. One of them is the IKK attack that was introduced by Islam et al. In 2012. And the other one is the count attack by Cash et al. In 2015. So the IKK take as input the co-occurrence pattern. Remember, the co-occurrence is the number of files shared by any two queries, and it will recover the queries. This is the purpose of the leakage attack. And the assumption that it relies on is it requires a persistent adversary, passive, known sample, but there is a caveat to it, and some known queries. And the vulnerable scheme from the ones that we have seen in the beginning of the talk are the baseline STE and semi-ORAM. So this attack won't work against the full ORAM or the opaque structure. Then there is the count attack, which is similar, but it requires an additional pattern in order to work. It requires the response length. Remember, the response length is the number of files in the response, and it will recover the queries. The assumption it relies on is the persistent, passive adversary, and known data. And similarly, the vulnerable scheme are the baseline STE and semi-ORAM. So why I'm mentioning these two attacks, that, as I have said, they are influential for two main reasons. So first of all, it's a common wisdom or a widely understood in the encrypted search community right now that leaking the response identity pattern or the access pattern is really bad or very damaging. We can hear also devastating in some cases. And the second point why these attacks were very influential, they are actually very highly cited. And they were used as a motivation to design Oblivious RAM construction. They say, okay, now that we are leaking a lot, that these attacks are damaging, we need to design Oblivious schemes. So one part of this work that we have done is we took actually a closer look at the IKK and the count attack. And so you can find the details in the paper, but this I will just, due to scarcity of time, I will just summarize our finding in one slide, and this is what I will call the non-trivial limitation of the IKK and the count attacks. So first of all, both of these attacks, they require a high known data rates. So you remember the delta that I have explained in the beginning. So for example, the count V1 and requires in order to work, and by work I mean just 20% on around, like something like that, to recover the data, it requires 80% knowledge of the user's data. And also 5% of the queries, I won't go into details about this assumption, but please come to me if you have any question about it. The IKK requires around 95% in order to work, and 5% of the queries. So then there is count V2 that appeared in 2019. that doesn't require the known, so it doesn't appear, it's a modification of count v1, doesn't require the known queries, and it does slightly better, 60–70% of known data rate is required. So as you can see, so would this attack be considered practical or theoretical? It's a question. We believe that they are theoretical in the sense that it's very unrealistic to assume that the adversary has access to 70% of the user's data. So in crypto, we have already primitives that they are designed for this specific example in particular. Private information retrieval is actually used for that if the data is already public. So should we dismiss these two attacks? No, they are definitely important. They are definitely a first step toward understanding the leakage. But it's important to know what are the implications, and we should be very careful about the assumption. Then there are this, what we found, the second point is actually very surprising to us, which is actually we redid the evaluation, and instead of taking high selectivity keyword, we took low selectivity. And let me explain what we mean by high selectivity. So think of a document collection, and I'm taking the most frequent keyword that actually appears in all of the documents. So the attacks, what they did is they evaluated just on the most frequent keywords, which is basically searching. Let's say that you have a collection of emails you are searching for, like a query of the organization you are belonging to. So usually in querying, what we do is basically you query for the scarce or the stuff that it's less likely that you will find it. So it's a distribution question. So usually when you do an attack, you should ideally have to run the attack on all of the query distribution. So we did that. We reran the attack, and we found out that the counter attack and the IKK do not work. They both fail when we picked low selectivity keyword with 0% recovery. And finally, both attack, they require the co-occurrence pattern, and it's actually relatively easy to hide this co-occurrence pattern by using schemes like opaque structured encryption. Please refer to the paper for more details about this construction. So the other part of this work, we were interested, okay, so now IKK and count, we know they are very limited, they don't work in many scenarios. So can we actually do better? Can we design attacks that actually outperform and can actually do better independently of the selectivity of keyword and other variables? And the answer is nuanced. So for the design of attacks, we actually designed better attacks in the known data model. So we designed a first attack called a subgraph ID attack that requires the response identity pattern and recovers the queries. The schemes that they are vulnerable, similarly to IKK and count, is the baseline and the semi-ORAM. There is another variant of the same attack that works on volume now instead of the access pattern or response identity pattern. And we have also introduced two attacks that we call volume analysis and selective volume analysis that they work on all of the schemes because they need just the total volume in order to work. We have also, in the paper, an injection type of attack that works against all of the schemes. So the first injection attack was actually introduced by Zhang et al. In 2016, and it works only against STE and semi-ORAM. But this attack actually that we have in this paper works against all of the schemes. So because of time, I will just focus on the subgraph attack in the volume version of it. So how it works. I will just go briefly about it just to give you an idea how these attacks work. So imagine that we have here, so we have our K, which is like the subset, the adversary, the subset of document that the adversary know. And D is the collection of all documents. So we have a delta equal to 50% here, right? So now that we have this known data that the adversary knows, it can, because we are leaking the volume, and actually, like it has actually, the adversary has access to both documents. It can easily build this bipartite graph where it maps every keyword to the document it belongs to, but more specifically to the volume of that document it belongs to. So we have this bipartite graph. On the other hand, because we are in a persistent setting, the adversary also observed the leakage that I have mentioned earlier, and in this case, is the volume leakage. So every query, like when what the adversary sees after the execution of the query, it sees that this query matches, for example, 5 files, and each file has its own volume. And similarly, it can also build this bipartite graph where it maps every query to the volumes of the files it belongs to. Okay? So this is the setup or the setting of the attacks. So the attack so the purpose of the attack is to match. It's a subgraph matching problem, which is really nice here. The idea is we want to match these cues here that you can see to the keywords that we have here. It's basically picture it as we want to take this graph and map it to this one. So, and in this case, it's an easier problem in the sense that the top vertices here in this bipartite graph are the common ground of truth. We know that this orange vertex here is the same as this one because they are equal volume. So the attack works on the following observation, which is pretty simple, but it's really nice. So for a node to match a query, like for a bottom vertex, a keyword to match a query here, you have to have that the neighbors of the keyword should be a subset of the neighbors of the query that it's supposed to be a match. And we have also this heuristic, which is that the number of neighbors of the keyword are a fraction of the size of the neighbors of the other query. So we use this observation algorithmically, and we do the following. So we have our neighbors, as I mentioned here. It's just like a different representation of the graph here. And then we will start with a candidate set, which is all the full of the keyword, like all the set of the keywords. So there is nothing happening so far. Then we just apply our observation, which is basically like for this keyword to be to match this query, you need to be a subset. So W4 clearly is not a subset of this one. W5 is clearly not a subset of this one as well. So what we are left with is just W1. We do the same for Q4 and the same for Q5, and we build our new, as you can see here, our new candidate sets. Okay? So now what we do is, it's simple. So now whenever we have a single match, it means that if we have a single set, it means that it's a potential match. And we will design. This is as a match. This is as a match because it's a singleton. And then what we will do this reiterative process that will go over the candidate sets, and we'll just eliminate the matches that we knew. And we will have this new candidate set in the second iteration. And if they are singleton, they are match, and we go on until the attack terminates. So we have our match, and the attack will succeed. So this is how the attack works. Let's talk briefly about the evaluation, how we did our evaluation of all of these attacks. So we work with the Enron dataset similar to the IKK and the count attack. So Enron is around 500,000 email, which is structurally composed as every folder is for an email account. And we have also, what we have done is that we have taken this Enron dataset and we have composed 2 or 3 actually setting that they are pretty common in encrypted search. The single user setting, which is like if I am a user, I want just to do encrypted search on my own collection. So what we did is we took randomly a folder from here and we assigned it to one user setting. Then what we did again is that we took a subset now of the folders and we mapped that to the multi-user setting. So just to have an idea how the attack will do in different settings of the data collection. Then what we also varied the query space, 500 and 5,000, and that we have sampled among all of the 77,000 keywords that we have in Enron dataset. We have changed the composition of the query space. We have changed the query frequency in the sense that we played, as I have mentioned in a previous slide, with high frequency, pseudo-low frequency, and low frequency, or selectivity of the keywords, just to see like how the attacks will do actually if we play with selectivity. And this is what we got. These 2 actually graphs depict what we have obtained in terms of result. So this is a single user setting, 500 keyword, and the entire composition. So if we are querying from the high selectivity keywords, what we have is that the attack, some of the attacks really work really well. So the subgraph attacks, they do pretty well. The other attacks, they do pretty well if you have a very high known data rate, but they do really bad when you have less than 30% or so. So the interesting part is that when we start playing with the low selectivity, actually, all of the attacks actually didn't work well. So they all behaved around like below 20%, and some of them are, for example, the subgraph attacks below 5%. So we have like more extensive experiments. Please refer to the paper to learn more. So this is a table that summarizes all of attacks. So this is the high picture if you want to get some takeaways from this talk. So all of the attacks, what you see in green is what we call, it's very theoretical. Like they either require very high known of data rate, they are not practical. And even some of our attacks, which is very nice about this work, is that even some of our attacks are not practical. And this is good to highlight it as well. So what is in yellow, we say it's theoretical, maybe there is a room to improve them. And what is in red is actually what is dangerous. And we believe that we need to have countermeasure against such, which is when you leak the response identity or the volume, and if you have a very high known data rate. So in this case, you need to use some countermeasure that I'm mentioning in the takeaways final slide. So the point that I really want to emphasize today is that cryptanalysis in encrypted search is not black and white. It's a very nuanced area. We are still learning a lot about it. Research is still going on, but we need to be very precise on the assumptions. Also, what we learned through this work is that revealing the access pattern and the response identity sometimes is not that bad as it's believed in the community. So using baseline STE or semi-ORAM semi-ORAM schemes is still okay if you're for low selectivity keywords. If you know that you are querying from some specific distribution, it's totally fine. Also, we have introduced 2 ORAM-based search attacks. So we know that ORAM now is vulnerable also similarly to baseline STE, to volume attacks, also in the injection regime. We have learned also, this is very important, that the subgraph attacks are practical for high selectivity queries, as it requires very small fraction, like around 5%. And for that, we propose some countermeasures. So if you are in the regime below 80%, so we advise to use opaque structured encryption scheme that we introduced in this work. And for delta larger than 80%, you might use PBS, which is a construction that appeared 2 years ago, or VLH or AVLH, or a construction that hides the volume. Thank you.
So does anyone has any question for this very interesting work?
Hi, Tariq. So my first question is about the robustness of the attacks. So what you were mentioning in the previous slide is the countermeasurements are like only full use of ORAM or hide all the volume. These are the two.
Which one?
In the previous slide, the last two.
Like the opaque is not using ORAM. Opaque is not using ORAM. So actually it's very nice. It's a very simple construction that we call the response. It works in the response hiding regime. So I don't have time to. We can talk offline, but it doesn't use ORAM.
Potential countermeasurements in general in this area of attacks are ORAM and padding. But you are considering only cases that you are doing either full ORAM, the attacks that you are doing in third and fourth bullet, or you are doing full padding in the countermeasurement in the second bullet.
This is not full padding.
What do you mean? You're padding in this work the result to have the worst case result in the data set.
No, we are not doing that. Like you are referring to VLH?
Yes.
No, it doesn't work that way. There is no padding in VLH.
Okay. So the question is like, are there any other possible countermeasurements? And the second question is like, how robust is your attacks? For example, if I pad everything to a power of 2, or to a power of 3, or to a power of 4, then I'm reducing the number of unique result sizes. In that case, how robust is your attack?
I think that it's, there are still lots of dimensions that you need to investigate in this research area. So here, so one thing that I want to highlight, these countermeasures is only for a specific case when you have high known data rate. This is one, high known data rate of the user's data. And also you query from high selectivity keywords. So if you are in this regime, you need to use some countermeasures. So there are plenty of countermeasures. So these are the constructions that we are more familiar with. You can think of other countermeasures, padding, like as trivial padding, as you were mentioning. But this is an open area of research. There are still. I didn't mention other work, like a recent work by Kevin Yeo, Pino, and Moti in CCS last year, where they build on VLH to have a better volume hiding construction. So so I didn't mention all of the countermeasures that they are possible. I just mentioned some that I'm very familiar with. But of course,
Do you know how your attacks are behaving based using these countermeasurements?
Yeah, we did. So when we used PBS, none of our attacks worked.
Sure. I just want to clarify, what do you mean by high known data rate? So you are assuming, what does this high known data means?
High known.
Yeah, so basically you are assuming that attack, you show like 80%, 95%.
Yeah, so it's subjective. Like, you know, this is
No, I mean, what's your definition? So basically the original attacks were assuming knowing some co-occurrence statistics. It doesn't need to know the exact data. So
you refer to your attack, the IKK?
Yeah.
So no.
Yes.
So it requires like you know better. So your attack was redone in the counter attack by the guy. So and they found out that you.
That's the reason. I mean, when I heard it, because I don't remember. You're assuming something like.
Yeah, you assume 95% of the known of the data for the attack to work. So
I'll take it offline.
Offline.
So thank Tariq again.
Yeah.